All right, we want to take a few moments to tell you about one of our very good friends of the show, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio serving patients in Westlake. The team at Aligned Health Center helps patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. The mission at Aligned Health Center is simple: to help people in Westlake and Beechwood areas achieve the best possible health and overall wellness. They know what it's like to have constant neck and back pain. It's no fun, and they are here to help. And as a special offer for the Orange is Orange listeners, it's you guys, Aligned Health Center is offering a free exam to our incredible fans. That's right, free exam at no cost just for you. So give Aligned Health Center a call at 440-230-6865 or visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment and to learn more about how Aligned Health Center can help you. Make sure you mention Oranger at checkout to receive the free offer. Again, that's 440-230-6865 or visit alignedhealthcenters.com.
Part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
45-50, 45-40, run, William, run! He's got blockers in front, 5, touchdown! Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score! Kick blocked! They blocked the kick!
All right, we are back. This is the Orange is Oranger Cleveland Browns podcast. I'm Holly Wetzel. He is Tyvis Powell. And when I say we're back because we're back within like 7 days because we were off for like 6 weeks and we just can't help when there's huge news.
No. We weren't off. You were off for 6 weeks.
No, it wasn't. Where was I?
You were very busy. You became
doing what? I wasn't doing YouTube shows with our guest today. I know that much.
Hold on. You were a contestant. Like you were the prize.
Oh, God.
I'm just saying.
We're going to talk about that, aren't we?
I'm just saying. Every
yeah, we're talking about that.
Let me tell you something. That was one of the most. All right. Well, let me back up. So yes, I work for ESPN Cleveland, and I have happened to share my dating life woes with some of my fellow teammates there. And Tony Rizzo, who is the host of the Really Big Show in the Morning, decided to have me share my experiences on the air, which he has gotten a kick out of my just detrimental dating days. So, which turned into now, let's find Holly a date because I can't find one by myself. Clearly. So let's just ask all of our listeners of ESPN Cleveland if they would like to take me out. And that was a scary thing. Let me tell you, people sent in resumes, like stat sheets, status.
You know how Holly, I've been a football player since I was 9 years old. Never had my own dating show. So you're doing something. You're pretty big time. Just saying. Just gonna throw that out there. I've done a lot of cool things in my life, like won national championships, met the president. Never been on a dating show. Never. But go ahead with your story.
Well, we made our own up. But and by the way, since our guest is here, he made a small hello, and yes, we got to hear about this. Is Jason Lloyd? Are you still the editor-in-chief of The Athletic? Are you a senior contributor? What is your title, by the way? I feel like I've messed it up a lot, and you just are so nice. You never correct me.
my title is going to keep cashing checks until they throw me out.
All right.
That's my title. No, I don't know what it is. I don't even know what it is, honestly, because we're not structured by city anymore. Now we're structured by sport. So there is no The Athletic Cleveland anymore. So therefore, plus I was such a horrible editor. They were like, yeah, we cannot have this man in charge of a plant, let alone a staff. So yeah, I just do Indians, Browns, Cavs, senior columnist, I think is what my title is, but it doesn't matter. The Athletic Cleveland.
You could have been a judge on the dating show. That would have been helpful.
I wanted to be. That would have been great.
I second that. I definitely would have wanted to be there. I would have helped you pick, a really good guy.
We would have been flashing the number of which one to take.
Well, Taj, our producer, his wife, my best friend Emily, I talk about a lot. She was there and she was telling me who to pick and who not to pick. Basically.
Oh, so it was rigged.
Well, I was texting back. I was like, just don't make sure I pick someone good. Like, you know me very well. So just don't let me down.
So has this date occurred?
No,
you're not going on it, are you?
Well, Here's
she
the
has
thing.
to. She has to.
I don't
Oh,
have
I
to.
told her there's muscle going. If she's going, someone else is going.
I know. Well, yes, our social guy is probably going to come with, but here's the thing. And this poor guy, God forbid he listens.
Oh, he listens.
I'm sure he is. He's
100% listening.
That's happening.
He seems like such a nice guy. Like, this is not a knock on him.
But
it's
get to the butt.
What?
Get to the butt. There's a
Yeah,
butt coming. But
we were supposed to on Friday, and legit, I worked very late on Friday. I didn't get home till later. And we had texted about a couple different things to do. And it kind of turned into like me planning the thing. And I always end up doing that. I always end up somehow, some way. I am not like that type of person that like likes to take charge and like plan A, B, and C, and we're doing this and that's not me. So, but somehow with most men, I end up like kind of like deciding what we're going to do. And like, I didn't want to have to do that. And it's kind of starting to go down that path. And I'm like, you know what? It's not going to work it's not going to work Friday night. We'll have to wait and figure that out. And I haven't texted him back. Not because of him. I just haven't, because now I feel bad about it. And he's like, don't worry. I know it's only, that's true. That was Friday. Today's Monday. So yeah, I guess that's true. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like I need someone else there just in case. Not that I don't trust this guy, but I just don't know him. I know nothing about him. He's not on the internet anywhere.
Listen, make it a Wednesday and I'll be up there. Make it a Wednesday.
I told her somebody's going.
Somebody else is going. Make it a Wednesday. Make it on the 20th, on the Wednesday on the 20th. And after, we do our thing, I could just go ahead and I'm gonna go get me a table for one on the
Give me a
there we go. There we get us a table. We'll be on the other side.
just like two dads.
Two dads. My two dads.
Happen to be. You know what? We gonna stop by you. Oh my, Holly just so happened to be in the area. What a coincidence. Funny running into you here.
Oh my God. You know what? I kind of did that once. I was out with like on a double date with this first date, and this was years ago, and was not feeling the guy at all. Like, it just is not working. And one of my friends from high school that I've continued to stay friends with was at the bar, and he was like, Holly, come on over. And so I was talking to him, and I was like, he's like, well, what are you doing? You're on a date? Oh my gosh. And I was like, no, it's okay. So I was like, hey guys, it was great hanging out with you, but I went and hung out with my friend from high school.
Wow,
that's
awesome.
And I wonder why I'm single, ladies and gentlemen. And here I am. So that was my dating story. It's not that exciting. It was very embarrassing, and but I think it made for good radio, which is the whole point. Content is king across the board. Right. So trying to make sure we keep the listeners entertained always, even if it's at the, spite of me. Well, who else keeps us very entertained is Baker Mayfield.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he does
all the time. And so while we're back together after 6 days, Tyvis, 7 days, whatever, is because Baker Mayfield is officially no longer a Cleveland Brown.
You sad?
And,
sad?
Huh?
Are you sad about that?
No. Are you sad about
it? I actually thought that you were like a huge Baker fan. I like
back in the day, sure was.
That's what I'm saying. So like it didn't not even a little bit.
Here's the thing, and I have a couple. This is actually going to lead in very nicely to Jason, because Baker, I feel like, Jason, you wrote this in your article, and this is what kind of really stood out to me. You said, admittedly, that's not a high bar, which is why Mayfield's mediocrity looked so good in isolated moments to a thirsty fan base searching for someone to love. And that made me think of Colin Cowherd brought something up a couple months ago, and he talked about Browns fans having standards. We know that him and Baker had been at war for many moons, but a lot of that was it sparked in me. This is before the Deshaun stuff and all of that, was like, Browns fans, where are your standards, right? Like, 49ers were getting rid of Jimmy G. He took them to the NFC Championship. Like, where are your standards? And I think that that's a really good when you wrote that, that's kind of what made me think of that. Do you think, Jason, as the season had went on this past season, but before that too, that was it kind of like a Love is Blind situation? Were we just in that honeymoon phase in the beginning with him, even during like the rocky of the switching of the coaches and COVID and all that stuff? And then 2021 kind of shed that light on maybe the reality of the relationship and the situation.
All right, so I'm coming up with this off the top of my head. Back in the day, back in my single days, I loved the Funky Buddha. Anyone remember Funky Buddha on West 6th? There's that, Holly, come on, you got to know. You remember the Buddha?
I feel like a little bit, maybe.
It was like the corner, like West 6th and St. Clair or something like that. And you'd go in the club.
But it was over there where all the bars are.
Yeah, and it was like that. And Browns fans for 20 years were in the club looking. And every 1:15, 1:30, the lights came on. There's nobody left to go home with. And finally, 2018, and there she was. Makeup was smeared on, run down her face. That's okay. Little pudgy. That's okay. Hair is mussed up. That's okay. Dirt under her finger. That's okay. She's ready to go home. After 20 years. After 20 years. You take anything at that point. Anything looks
so
good
true.
after 20 years. And that's where Browns fans were. And listen, I'm having fun with it, but Baker to me is an average NFL quarterback. You can do a lot worse in the NFL than Baker Mayfield. You truly can. You can also do a whole lot better. And for a roster trying to win a championship, you have to have better. And the thing that I keep going back to is Jared Goff took the Rams to a Super Bowl. And the Rams looked at him and said, that's not good enough. We can do better. Sean McVay said, I need better out of the quarterback position. And they moved on from a quarterback who took them to the Super Bowl. So save me the Baker led us to a playoff win in Pittsburgh. Yes, he did. It was also an awful game played by the Steelers. They were up, 14-0 in the first couple minutes of the game. Like everything fell in their way. That's not to dismiss. Baker brought them, I wrote in the piece, Baker brought them some of the highest highs they've had in the last 20, 25 years. Not a very high bar, though, from where they've come from. So he's fine in some of the things he can do. He's extremely limited. I had two former NFL quarterbacks last year tell me Baker plays like he's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and he is not those guys. He needs to stop. Trent Dilfer, I thought, put it best. Let's talk to Trent Dilfer about it. Trent's like, stop trying to save the play call. Stop trying to save the play and run what's given to you, because Kevin Stefanski's offense stacks plays on top of each other. First down leads to second down, leads to third down. And if you screw up 2nd and 7 when it should be 3rd and 4, and we're now 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 11 because you did something foolish, you just messed up the drive. And Dilfer said, play more like Drew Brees and less like Patrick Mahomes. And for all the Brees' accolades, really all he did was he ran the system in front of him. And that was just never Baker's style. And, I got all the numbers in there. And I don't even know why this piece blew up. I said that before we started recording. Like, there are certain pieces that you write, you come out with, you're like, yeah, okay, this one's going to go. This one wasn't that at all. And all of a sudden, like, Colin Cowherd's show is calling me. I'm like, I'm not going on that show. Like, it's just, it wasn't anything. There was like one nugget in there.
You're too busy doing the Orange is Oranger. Okay. Sorry, Colin Cowherd.
That's right.
Get in line. Okay.
You're going to have to wait. But there was like one new nugget in there. But otherwise, all this stuff is stuff I'd written multiple times before. His fourth quarter numbers when they're down a possession or less with the ball and 4 minutes to go. They are awful. They're some of the worst numbers you'll find. And I don't have them in front of me now. But go find it in the piece. You probably do if you have the story.
Yeah, passer rating of 17.8 in the final 4 minutes of the game last season when the Browns trailed by one possession or less. And then you said,
and for everyone who says it's the shoulder,
yep. Mayfield's career passer rating was 51.1 under the same parameters, 59th in the NFL. His 19 career interceptions in 4 quarters are the second most in the league since 2018.
So that's his entire career. This is who he is. And I'll go back to the Kansas City game, week 1. And people wanted to kill me because I said, I put that on 6. I put the loss on 6. He was marvelous for 3 quarters. He was terrific Kansas City for 3 quarters until you needed him. You needed him when you had the ball last and 75 yards to go. And what did he do? He threw a pick. Oh, he got tripped, because there's always an excuse with Baker. He got tripped. His shoulder hurts. Freddie Kitchens is his coach. At some point, you have to stop making excuses for him and start looking at it's on the quarterback. It's on the quarterback to overcome this stuff. And he could never overcome it. And I thought Zach Jackson, my partner at The Athletic, had a great point. Like if Kansas City's the bar, and I know the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, but Kansas City, in my mind, is still the bar in the AFC. You're not going to beat Kansas City 42-20. The way you're going to beat them is by having the ball last at the end of the game. That's how you beat them. You have to have the ball last and leave no time on the clock. You have to drive the length of the field, either get yourself a field goal range or score a touchdown and win the game going off the field. That's how you beat a team like Kansas City. You were not going to do that with Baker. You were not. It's been proven time and time again. He is not that guy. When you got to have him, when its defense can really pin its ears back and come after the quarterback, 9 times out of 10, he is not going to deliver for you. And the numbers since 2018 back that up.
I agree wholeheartedly. I agree.
Good.
I agree with everything you said. The only time he's ever proven that what you said not to be true was in the Cincinnati game where he hit the
Cincinnati. Yep.
To DPJ. But that's always been my biggest knock with Baker is that when it's the fourth quarter and it's the game-winning drive, he does not produce. Now, I will say in that Kansas City game, if the punter didn't drop the ball, they could have easily.
That was a big play.
They kind of cruised. They could have cruised their way. The play calling would have been totally different. Nick Chubb could have milked the clock out. It'd have been a totally different thing. So I can't necessarily put that all on him, but you are correct.
But you know what, Tyvis? I put it on him because things go wrong in a football game. And you need your quarterback.
And look at the Chargers game.
If you're a
the Chargers, you can't do that.
Sure can.
You cannot do that.
End of the Chargers game?
No, that's
totally on him.
That's not on. That's on the defense. Don't do that.
Oh my God!
That loss is on the defense.
Over 3.
I can't believe y'all.
They have to go 50 yards.
I cannot believe y'all.
They have to go 50 yards.
They blew 2.
Who is the NFL former player in this room?
They blew 2 coverages
on Zoom. Me. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait a minute. So the defense didn't blow 2 coverages?
Oh, they did. But they also, how many defensive players did they lose during that game? They were getting dragged off the field. They were down to about their 4th or 5th corner, their 4th, 6th.
This was the starters that blew these coverages.
No, late in the game, they had a ton of injuries that game. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure.
No. Dale Pitt and I think J3 blew a coverage, and that's why Mike Williams had 2 wide open touchdowns down the middle of the field.
Oh, and listen, they were bad. They were bad that game. But offensively, again, like I'm trying to remember, like
it
was a shootout. I mean, at the end of the day, the ball ended up in Baker Mayfield's hands, and the 3 or 4 plays that he did was terrible. Yes, I get that. But what I'm saying is, over the course of the game, he actually played well. It was just like what you said for 3 quarters. He played extremely well. That's a fact. That's a fact. But still. It's not 100. What I'm saying is that loss wasn't 100% his fault.
No,
but him winning it could have been. Him winning it was on him. Right? Like I think that's the thing. It's not all the loss, but it's the win that should be on him.
I'll tell you what. I heard an interesting thing today. Does it bother y'all or make y'all wonder about this? The fact that his best season was a COVID season.
Well, that's Jason, I've asked you this before. I think when you were on before with us a couple years ago, I asked about COVID because I said, was COVID a special time for, and well, it was a special time. I shouldn't say that, but at least for the Browns, it was almost like that was all they could focus on was football. All they could focus on was each other. And that next week, and really every week was a hurdle. And if you got to the next week with no COVID or at least 1 or 2, that was a win. And I felt like the focus was completely just zoned in.
I think the benefit of the COVID year to the Browns was the fact that it minimized the number of people in the building and it minimized the noise around the organization. And they were able to sort of what you're talking about. You could really drill down and just focus on football. And that was the biggest thing, because then when more people start getting in the building and more voices and more opinions and everything else, that's when the Browns typically tend to get in trouble. And I said today on the Ultimate Cleveland Show, I thought Kevin's best year was that COVID. I mean, obviously he was terrific. Won Coach of the Year. There was problems last year. I thought for him to install his entire system basically over Zoom and have no extra mini camps that come with being a first-year head coach, no extra OTAs, nothing like that. I thought he was marvelous. But this year, I think will be his toughest coaching challenge in front of him, because number one, you have to heal the locker room from Baker, because there's damage done. from Baker's presence in there. And there was guys who were not happy with him and didn't want him there. You have to heal the locker room from Deshaun, because out of 53 guys, I promise you, there's a few dudes in there who aren't real thrilled with him being the quarterback because of the allegations around it, or because their wives are friends with Baker's wives, or whatever. There's issues there that you have to heal the locker room. Plus, you have to get two quarterbacks ready to go. Two new quarterbacks to your system. You're not bringing one quarterback up to speed. You're bringing two new starting quarterbacks up to speed, because you don't even know how long you're going to be without Deshaun, and you may not know at the start of training camp when he's coming back. So this is, to me, the most challenging season yet in front of Kevin. And I thought he handled the COVID year really, really well. Obviously, last year was not as good for across the board for everybody. And now we'll see this year with really, really a pretty big challenge in front of him.
That's very interesting to put it that way. I mean, I think the good news about this season for him is that he'll at least have a healthy quarterback. So, if he was able to be in close games with an injured quarterback last season, at least,
let me tell you something.
Make things a little bit better.
Whenever it is that Deshaun's on the field, they're not going to need a minute and a half to get to the midfield. I promise you, Deshaun will get them to midfield in about 33 seconds. You're not going to need a minute and a half to get the ball to mid. Go back and watch some of the tape of the Texans. I was talking to somebody at the Browns who was watching tape of Deshaun and said, like, 3 plays. They went 60. I forget who the game was. It was like before the half. They were down, and he went 65 yards. Boom, 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 in like 3 plays. Touchdown.
I tell you what, my most memorable game is when he played the Seahawks in 2017, and it was a shootout with Will Fuller going against the LO man. That man was electric that game. That's when I realized that Deshaun Watson was somebody special, because he to go up against that LOB defense like that and be able to put up those type of numbers. I was like, this kid is really special. But that bringing me to this season. If he is out there, the first 4 games or whatever it is, I don't know what the suspension is. Let's say he gets 0 games. Is it Super Bowl or bust for the Browns for you?
Yeah, that's come up a couple of times, and it's so hard. First of all, I don't think it's 0 games. I don't think that's realistic. I think the world would stop rotating if Judge Robinson came back and said, "No, I don't see anything here. Let's play ball." I think the earth would shake if that happened. So I think he's sitting something. So then it's a matter of what. And I've thought all along it's probably 6 to 8. I have nothing to base that on, no sourcing to base that on, just trying to look at past precedent and the NFL's personal conduct policy in regards to sexual assault cases and everything else. So I'm just kind of figuring 6 to 8. So let's just go with that theory. If Deshaun's back, 6 to 8 games. I can't say, for a franchise that's never made a Super Bowl, I can't say this year is Super Bowl or bust. Mm-hmm. I had an argument, I think, back on the Ultimate Cleveland show about Jay said if they don't make it to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl or something like that, then the trade would be a disaster.
That's what he said.
Yeah. And I can't agree with that, because this team's never been to a Super Bowl. Yeah. But will it be disappointing if they don't go to a Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson at quarterback? Yeah, I think I can say that. But I'm not going to call the trade a disaster just because they don't make it to make it or win a Super Bowl. But the AFC is so good, and the fact that he's missed a year and he's probably going to miss time this year, I'm not putting the expectation on a Super Bowl this year for them, but I'm putting the expectation on, I expect him to take them to a Super Bowl at some point during the length of his contract. I guess that's the best way I can answer that.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, and because people forget, right? Like, we have him on. He's 5 years, right? Is it
5 years?
So
5 years.
And I know that it's like, yeah, but you're wasting everyone else's talent for the year, right? Like, and I totally understand that, but there is that other end of it that it's like, well, it's not like this is it. And on top of it, because people are really acting like it is the end all be all, like it is Super Bowl or bust for this year. And then what was the point? And it's, I heard today, by the way, and Jason, I want to get your opinion on this, that if the Browns knew what they know now with Deshaun and Baker, I mean, if things played out the way that how they've played out, and they knew they were going to play out this way, all drama tied to it, would they have still made the deal?
Yes.
That's what I think.
Yes, they would. I think
who I was listening to were saying no, like they would not have, that the Browns wouldn't have. And I don't believe that for a second. I think they knew that this was going to be a shitstorm, right? To the level of probably not, fine. But it has been a shitstorm, and I think they kind of knew that this is what was going to happen.
Tyvis, go first, and then I'll
I-
unpack this a little bit.
I just keep saying that for a coach that come in, like you only getting so many years. And I keep saying, like, for some odd reason, to me, people keep saying that Dave Baker and Stefanski had a good relationship. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think that's all the way true. I don't. Because if Baker was a good quarterback, and all the people that's Baker bros, y'all got to just take what I'm saying with an open heart, and just because I've been around the block a couple of times, I know a few things. If Baker was Stefanski's guy, and Stefanski really liked Baker, don't you think he would have got him paid no matter what? Like he would have, that deal would have got signed for sure. Because I know for a fact that if a coach needs a player or believes in a player, he will take care of that player. He'll make sure that player gets compensated for sure. But it doesn't seem strange to y'all that no deal was. Did they even offer him a deal before?
No.
Okay,
No.
so no deal was on the table. So I mean, that doesn't that raises a flag. Like that's like I would say what I know about the San Fran situation, but I ain't even gonna go into that. But like I'm saying, like if a coach believes in the player, he's gonna get that guy played because his job's on the line. This guy has the best interest for me to keep my job, and I need this guy to help me keep my job. So I'm gonna make sure that he gets paid. If the fact that no deal was on the table, like Stefanski kind of was like, Baker's okay, but that's not the guy that I want. And it's not like he selected him anyway. So that's my whole thought about that. Go ahead.
Well, so now you gave me even more to unpack. This is like Christmas morning. So let's unpack what Tyvis said first. And I agree with you 100%. And if you go back and listen to what Kevin would say post-game and what he would say during the week with Baker, and it was all about like trying to set him up in rhythm. And go back and watch the plays of their first year together. The throws that Baker was making in the first quarter, these are simple pitch and catch routes. They're just real simple screen, wide open post or dig route where a guy's just open in the middle of the field, turns around, the ball's right there. There was nothing real fancy. And then as the game went on, after he caught a rhythm a little bit, they try and get a little bit more intricate with the routes and try and get them hot. Do you really need to baby a $35 million quarterback like that and make sure that everything's perfect for him and make sure that the routes are clean, the pocket's clean, make sure that he's got plenty of time and you're running these simple elementary type routes? And the one game where they didn't, because I wrote about this, I remember this, the one game where they didn't was the Cincinnati game where OBJ got hurt, where Kevin said post-game they felt like they had some shots down the field or something like that they could take. And so they went aggressive with the pass game early on. Baker was horrible. He was horrible. OBJ gets hurt, and then it's almost like they said, okay, we have to go back to the way we did it before. And they dialed it all the way back, and we started slow again. They went elementary, and they went back to the simple routes and the simple route trees, and Baker caught a little bit of a rhythm, and they came back and they won that game. All credit to him. But I just don't think if you've got a $35 million franchise quarterback that you need to baby him to the extent that the Browns always seem to have to baby Baker. Now, to Holly's point, what you said about would they do the trade again? Yeah, I think that they would. And here's like, so the Browns are going to claim that they did this thorough, deep investigation. They spent more time on him than anybody else. Okay, if you're going to say that, then nothing that has come out since should surprise you, because no New York Times reporter should be able to uncover something that an NFL team cannot. So was there anything in that Times article with the 66 women that the Browns did not previously know? I say yes. I'm sure that there were. I'm sure that there were things in that article that they were not privy to prior to. So that right there blows holes in their investigation, as far as I'm concerned. This was not the deep dive, the most time we've ever spent that they're trying to portray it to be. However, having said that, what has changed from the time that the trade was made until today? We have two new lawsuits, two lawsuits emerged after the fact. After the trade went from 22 to 24. Obviously, we know Deshaun has settled 20 of those and only 4 remain. But even in those two new suits, the allegations were all about the same. So the 66 women was a jarring number. Frankly, it was a gross number to hear, and it was uncomfortable. And some of the allegations of that New York Times story were really hard to get through, and it was awkward, and it was gross. But in terms of what the Browns knew about the case from the time the trade was made until now, Has anything drastically changed? I would say no, it hasn't. And therefore, now again, if he misses a year, I've said this is a disaster for the Browns. If he's out the entire year, and maybe I'm talking out both sides of my mouth because Tyvis, I just said it's not Super Bowl or bust for me this year. But if he misses an entire season, that is a disaster because he's now missed 2 years, if that's the case. And you just traded 3 first-round picks for a guy who's not going to take the field. You're lucky if you're going to be a 500 team, and you just lost a pretty valuable draft pick. The Browns traded these 3 ones thinking they were going to be drafted in the mid to late 20s, so it doesn't really matter. But if he's out for the entire year, that changes that pick drastically. So it's a disaster to me if he's out this entire year. But I think you can also look at the NFL and say, why are you going to suspend him for the year? Why don't you just put him on the exempt list? If it is a year, if it is indefinite, and all these words have been thrown around, why didn't you just put the man on the exempt list back in March before this feeding frenzy began over him? And that's where I think the Browns would have, not that they're going to win on appeal of that, but I think they have grounds to have sort of hostility with the NFL of like, how are you going to do this now? And why are you going to suspend him for a year? And I understand it's a little bit out of their hands because, Sue Robinson is one who's going to make that decision. But the two sides don't.
Roger Goodell's making the decision.
Well, okay. So I had that argument just the other day. And basically what came back to me was like, this is the system Roger wanted because he wanted to get the spotlight off of him in these cases. And he wanted to get the heat off of him in terms of these judgments. And so this is the system he wanted. So if he overturns what she comes back with, because Tyvis, I agree with you. I said, if he wants a year, if Roger wants a year, Roger's getting a year. He can just change the sentence to whatever he wants it to be. But the feedback I keep getting over and over is they don't think that's going to be necessarily the case just because this is the system that he wanted. This is what he wanted in place. Now, I don't think anybody thought it would be this kind of case. It's such a high profile case. It's the first one under this new system. But this is the system that they have, and this is the system that they've agreed to. So I'm really curious to see how this, as I'm sure all Browns fans are, see how this goes, see if Roger does change the decision at all, whatever does come down from the judge, and see how this goes. But if it's a year, I've said before, I don't think Browns fans can be outraged if it's a year just because the allegations are so kind of gross. But at the same time, I think you can look at the NFL and say, why did we even go through this? Why did you just put him on the exempt list until all this was cleared up in the first place?
Thank you for seconding what I said last week on the Roger Goodell not using Sue Robinson as his scapegoat. I think he's just gonna let it stand. Thank you.
I've talked to enough people who sort of feel that way. Like he was tired of taking the heat and having to make the decision on some of these things, and this is what he wanted. So we'll see now if he changes it.
But and devil's advocate, because I think agreed. I mean, she's there for a reason now. And yes, if he was, in my eyes, if I was him, I'm like, well, I'm going to go with what she says. And that's why she's here. She's supposed to be the impartial one and whatever. But do you think now with how all of this, the storm has grown now, that if the punishment, and look, you're never going to make everybody happy. We know that. But if the punishment is too low and he doesn't come in and step, like, is he just stepping in shit legit either way? I mean, at this point, because if he feels like he's damned if he does, if he damned if he doesn't, like if he doesn't step in, and the ruling is too low, then he's going to get shit for it. Or if the ruling is, too high, I guess that's my question about him is it in the best interest of him to let her make that decision? Or if she doesn't make the right decision in the majority of the, people's eyes here, the viewers' eyes, the fans, whatever, what happens then?
I think the smoke is off him as long as he goes with whatever she says. She's a federal judge. And if it's quote, too light for some people's liking, I think Roger just throws his hands up and says both sides presented their case, and we had a federal judge rule on it. Like, I don't know what else you want from me. That's how he keeps the smoke off him. Where he gets into it is if he does try and alter the decision. That's when problems arise one way or the other, whether he would go lower or higher or whatever. That's where I think one side or the other could really have a legitimate beef with him of like, what you just had a federal judge hear both sides, read all the testimony. Why are you interfering in this now? So I've gone back and forth on it, but I tend to believe, as we stand here today, I tend to believe that he's going to ride with whatever she comes up with, whatever she says goes, especially since it's the first one out.
then why even give him, and I don't know if you know this answer, I'm just asking this in general, why even give him the veto?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think as maybe a guardrail or a safe rail, it's sort of an emergency hatch. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But this is not the case for him to invoke that. I don't believe. I think you got to let both sides state their case. Let her review the facts. Let her read all of the testimony, and then you're just gonna have to live with it. I think you, whether that's 4 games, 6 games, 17 games, whatever it is, I really think you need to just kind of live with it.
Yeah, I was reading this before we actually started recording. I was reading this article on conductdetrimental.com. Jason, have you ever heard of this website?
No.
So, but it basically was breaking down, I don't know who this person is, and so sorry, person, but I did quote your website. I can't find the person that probably runs this thing, but sounds like this person's in law of some way, shape, or form. But he talks about how the difference between like a civil case versus the criminal case, and like the like you have to be proven by beyond a reasonable doubt, right? In a criminal court case, or in criminal, and then in civil, it's like there has to be some type of like, she just has to find some type of like, well, gosh, here it is. Let me read it to you. This silence is contrasted with other CBA provisions in which specify a clear preponderance of the evidence. Well, that's a big word, isn't it? That's the word of the day. But basically this article talks about the fact that like the evidence versus criminal on civil, like if she even like thinks there's like any type of possible wrongdoing, right? And so it's such a smaller margin, or actually I should say a much larger margin of just what could she find that she thinks could possibly be, violating the policy.
Well, the most famous of this difference between criminal and civil is probably OJ, right? Like OJ is found not guilty in the court of law, and then in civil court he's taken for millions that to this day he's never paid. That he was found liable in damages for that whole thing. So there's a huge difference in criminal and civil law and what you could be found responsible for, I guess.
But I think that's important because I, for one, I'm not in law by any means. And so this has actually taught me a lot of just reading through this, because my first initial reaction when this comes up, well, he was found not guilty, right? Like you in a court of law, but it's like, yeah, but like you said, that's a whole different court. It's whole different rules.
Well, everything's that's different. What you're talking about is different. The grand jury indictment is actually a really low bar to get an indictment. It doesn't take much. And I've learned, again, like you, just going through this, I've heard multiple attorneys say and tell me over the course of this, you could indict a ham sandwich. Like that's the big line among attorneys is anything could get indicted. Anyone could get indicted. It doesn't take much. And the fact that they could not indict him and they got 2 no bills really is in their favor in terms of they could take that to the NFL and say like, listen, they had all of this, they had all of these women and they couldn't even get an indictment out of them. And when we had Tony Busby on the radio and I asked him about that, and he said, I couldn't believe he said it. He said, what was it, Clark County in Houston, the DA did not want an indictment. That basically she sabotaged the case and threw the case. And they only talked to one woman. There was 9 names on one of the cases, and the court only talked to one of them. And he said, why is that? And that's a fair question. Is it because the other 8 don't have stories that hold up, or is it because the DA didn't want an indictment for a case that she knew was going to be high profile and was going to be difficult to win? And I was just shocked when Tony said that. So that's why there's so many layers to this. It's so complicated. It's not as simple as he did it or he didn't do it. And the other thing, while we're talking about the attorneys, the other side of this, when we had Rusty Hardin on the air, Rusty said, and again, this is when it was 22 women we were dealing with. Rusty said only 2 of the 22 really fall under the NFL's code of conduct policy, which now this is his defense attorney talking, and that's just his view of things, and that doesn't mean that Judge Robinson's going to agree, but it is noteworthy to me that we're only talking about 4. The NFL is only looking at 4 of the cases, and not the grant, the 22 or the 24 or the 66 or anything like that. It's just 4. And so that could bring a whole different type of punishment when you're dealing with 4 as opposed to 22 lawsuits, and then obviously the 24 and then those that were settled. So it's really, there's a lot of people that are going through this for the first time, the NFL included, and Judge Robinson included. And that's why it just feels like it points in this. Everyone's just kind of been groping around in the dark, trying to feel their way through, because we have no precedent on this, and we don't really know which way this is going to go.
Well, that's that's a lot of information. Let's shift focus. let's shift.
Well, I'm glad you do that, because let's end it this way here. Let's wrap up to Sean, because I do have another Baker do question. We'll go to a break and then come back. All right. So you think like 6 to 8 games, Jason, and do you think at this point, let's see. So today's July 11th as we're recording, and that's when the briefs were due. And there's a chance now they're saying that it could go past training camp. Do you really think it will? And Tyvis and I have a little baby pool. We've called it our own little baby pool of like what day it will come out, at what time. And so like we have our own little, so I have to ask you if you want to enter our little baby pool.
My day is coming up. We need to
you said Friday.
We need to expedite this process.
Let's get this labor going.
Well,
go ahead.
Here's the Browns, I believe, have been operating under the belief that they would have a decision by the start of training camp. But that doesn't necessarily mean, I know Justine Anderson tweeted today about, this could go on for a few weeks yet, and there may not be any clarity on day 1 of camp, which would really put the Browns in a difficult spot. But I don't think Judge Robinson really cares about that. She's not operating on the Browns timeline or the NFL training camp timeline. She's operated under how long she needs to deliver a verdict that she feels is fair and just. And so I am starting to wonder if this is going to bleed into training camp. And again, this isn't her concern, but who takes the snaps on day 1 of training camp if you don't know who the quarterback is, or if your starter is about to be suspended? And again, it goes back to what I said earlier about the job facing Kevin Stefanski this year. He has to get 2 starting quarterbacks, basically up to speed on his system. That's a big lift. Tyvis, you know as well as anyone, if you have 1 starting quarterback, if you're bringing a new starting quarterback into a system, get him to learn the playbook and know your calls and everything else, that's hard enough to do in an off season. They're trying to do it with 2. So this is really, really complicated. I tend to think, I still believe, I'm going to say that we have a decision by the start of training camp. I still believe it comes before day 1 of training camp, but it won't be because of that, if that makes sense. I don't think she's operating under a day 1 training camp deadline, but we're still 2 weeks out-ish from the start of training camp, 2 weeks and a few days, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember when the first day of camp is.
It's the 27th, so we're close.
27th. Okay, so we're 2 weeks and a couple of days out from the start of training camp. I think we have a decision by then, but probably not much before then.
So what you're telling me is I'm going to lose the bet.
The baby pool. Yes, you are.
What's your day? Your day's Friday?
Friday.
Woo! they better put a cork in Mama, because I think that. Yeah, I don't think it's coming on Friday.
Don't let them fool you. She know the decision already. She just, she trying to. She don't want to do it. She don't want to rush it. She didn't.
I believe that. There's got to be
everything. She know everything already. She got the
optics of it. Yeah.
She probably let Roger Goodell probably even know the decision right now. They just all like, we don't want to put it out too early.
Right.
Just wait a little bit, make it look like we really thoroughly went through this. But if she heard the stories and went through it, she know her decision.
So, Tyvis, your day is the 15th?
The 16th. Don't give me a day early. The 16th.
The 15th, you said, is Friday.
Yeah, the 15th is Friday. Today's the 11th.
Man. Even worse. I thought it was the 16th. Yep, 15. About
give me
5 o'clock.
Give me the 22nd. I'll take Friday the 22nd.
I think that's what she said.
I said Tuesday the 19th. I said Tuesday the 19th at 3-ish.
You know what it'll be?
Okay.
It'll be the 25th because we're leaving for vacation on the 25th. So it'll be the 25th when I'm driving down the highway. That's when the decision's going to come out. Because you know what? When the Watson trade dropped, I was driving down the highway, driving home from New Jersey. I literally drove off the road when I saw Schefter's tweet that Watson is going to the Browns. I drove off the road over the berm, and like the whole car woke up and looked at me. We were driving home from a trip. It was like, Deshaun Watson's coming to Cleveland.
I cannot
Yeah, it
believe
was. Yeah,
that was in March. This is how long this is going. So
I know.
This is a good transition because we're going to go back. We're going to wrap up with a little bit more of Baker. And this hopefully will be the last time we ever really actually talk about Baker Mayfield on this podcast. But so we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
All right, we are back on the Orange is Orange, your Cleveland Browns podcast. I'm Holly, that's Tyvis, and our guest today is the infamous Jason Lloyd.
Infamous now.
Yes.
Well, what did I do for that?
Your clout grows as the show goes on, the longer you stay on with us.
They got Colin Coward and Rich Eisen coming after him. I mean, shoot.
Exactly. Well, Jason, we've actually had some good guests on here. We had Denzel Ward on, we had Sheldon Day on, we've had some, pretty Michael Lombardi. We've had some good people. So,
well, they belong in a higher tier than me. I'm the tier below them.
Never. You're at the top.
I'm still faking it.
Baker Mayfield will not be on this podcast, unfortunately. I don't think he ever would, but
yeah, I might be able to have some pull. Let me holler at you for.
Well, he has a job now, people. So had he not had a job, possibly going into the season, we could have maybe, because his broadcasting career, I still believe, like others have said, that could be very bright. But we're talking about Jason Lloyd's article that he wrote in The Athletic recently, that came out last week. And the one real damning thing that you mentioned, which it's funny now because you would read it and maybe not think as much of it, and that's what you're looking in, but really you talked about when the rift, a specific part of the rift between Stefanski and Mayfield was when Stefanski did not go and sit with Baker for some film and went and ended up having to deal with something with Miles when he had made a couple comments during the post game. So that kind of miffed Mayfield, and Stefanski made sure to never miss a meeting, watching some film and stuff with Baker for the rest of the season. Can you talk more about that maybe wasn't included in detail about how that happened? And was that really the piece that kind of, or is that just one thing added on to many of where Baker maybe not felt like he was the number one child?
Honestly, it's just one. It's just one thing. And I was really kind of uncomfortable with how big that story got, because I was afraid that was getting blown out of proportion, because I'm sure there's a million of those little things. That's just the one that I caught wind of. You know what I mean? Stuff like that goes on. Tyvis, that stuff like that goes on all the time in locker rooms, and there's little squabbles or disagreements or whatever, and they get blown up into more than what they are, because it's one of the few that actually gets out. But I don't think that there was one thing really that led to this whole divorce. And in fact, I've talked to a number of people in the organization about, if Deshaun doesn't change his mind and he says no, who's the quarterback of this team? Every single person I've talked to said Baker. And that doesn't compute, knowing how he is, knowing how petty he is. It's just hard to believe that they ever could have reconciled this relationship. But the organization's thought was he ain't got any leverage. He's got your left on his deal. He's coming back. If he
So
wants
for
to get
them,
paid,
that was a possibility. That was a real possibility that they thought that they could
Yeah.
pass. Had he said yes, he could have been starting this year.
if Deshaun said no, if Deshaun passed,
I see what you're
Deshaun
saying.
passed and went elsewhere,
Got it. Yep.
Baker was going to be the guy.
Yeah,
Period.
that makes sense.
They were not going to pursue anybody else. And they were basically going to tell him, listen, you got a year left on your deal. If you want to play quarterback in the NFL, it has to be here because we're not trading you and we're not releasing you. You have to play here. And then when Deshaun came back, or when Deshaun chose Cleveland, obviously that sort of changed the entire atmosphere around that. And then they were happy to move on from him, or willing to move on from him. But so obviously the damage wasn't, it wasn't, in the Browns' eyes at least, it wasn't irreparable, even up until the very end. So, and that's why, I don't want to like sort of pee on my own article, but at the same time, like I just didn't think that was worth blowing it up to the level of where it went, because that thing was going everywhere. And I'm like, it's really not that big of a deal.
Well, do you think maybe though it was, well, first of all, he's all the dramatics around Baker. That's just a thing, right? Drama follows him and he follows it. But maybe because how vocal he was about how there wasn't problems, how, he went after local media members. I won't be your puppet, the whole thing. Like he went and actually like defended a lot of and saying, oh, those were all lies, when I think obviously, in fact, there was a certain amount of turmoil going on between the organization and him.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Baker's had one coach in his career that he's liked, and that's Lincoln Riley. And I don't know how he feels about Bob Stoops. Maybe he likes Bob, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But it was funny because actually, again, the article that I thought was really revealing was the one Zach Jackson and Joe Person, our writer in Carolina, did on like how the trade came together and why it took so long. I thought that one was really good. And they even said like Carolina reached out to Lincoln Riley to talk about Baker. I'm like, well, that's kind of like reaching out to Rusty Hard to talk about Deshaun Watson. Like that's the one guy who is going to be in his corner, because Lincoln loves Baker and Baker loves Lincoln. He feuded with, gosh, I don't even know the whole list. He feuded with Cliff Kingsbury. He feuded with Gary Barnett. He never even went to TCU, and he didn't like Gary Barnett. And he was talking trash with Gary Barnett, and to the point where Gary Barnett had to respond. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm sick of this." Obviously, we know about him and Hugh Jackson. I have no idea how he feels about Freddie. My guess is he doesn't like him a whole lot at this point. Like, how many coaches has Baker had, and how many does he actually like? He likes his high school coach, Hank Carter, and he likes Lincoln Riley. That's it. That's the extent.
Guys that kiss his ass, right?
Well, I actually spent some time with Hank in Texas. I actually really liked Hank, and he was real with Baker. He was tough on him, and he didn't. And when he had the incident in Oklahoma, when he got arrested, the whole thing, when he got tackled by the cops, and Hank told him like, "You let a lot of people down. Like that's not how you behave, and you disappointed a lot of people." So Hank didn't kiss his ass. I don't know Lincoln well enough, and I don't know about their relationship to say one way or the other. But it's just telling to me how many coaches he's had and how many he actually likes on this podcast before.
I don't think I have. I don't think
you have, actually. He hasn't.
Because that did not sit well with a lot of guys. No, and a lot of people kind of threw their arms up like, the dude was hurt. The season was over. What do you expect from him? No. So address that as a player. Why was that so bad?
No, because listen, it's so bad because here you are, like talking about these my guys. I'm gonna go to war with my guys no matter what. If I can play, I'm gonna play. And it's like, okay, you got me like, okay, you know what? You hurt as a player, you hurt. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna step my game up a little bit on the defensive side. We're gonna try to get you the ball back some more and try to keep some points off the board so you can make the game manageable like that. So I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna give you everything because I ride with you. You my guy. But then you lose this last game and it's over with. Now you like, all right, y'all, I'm gonna just go ahead and get this. It's like, no, we'd have been sitting there struggling this whole season. And now you want to, now that the playoffs is out of the picture, now you want to go get the surgery? No, you gonna come out here and play this last game. It doesn't matter now. The damage is done. Like, come on, let's just finish this thing, finish it off. Like you started with us, finish with us. Like, why would you sit out the last game after you didn't freaking handicapped us the whole season anyways? Like that, as a defensive player, I'd have been pissed. I ain't gonna lie, I would have really been pissed off. Like, you really just kind of I'd have felt like you kind of sabotaged the season a little bit. You're gonna sit there knowing you was hurt, knowing you had to get surgery, and now that we at the playoffs, now all of a sudden you want to go get it. No, it's one game, finish it out, and then it is go get the surgery. Then it ain't gonna make no difference whether you get it this week or next week.
I think there's a lot of people in that locker room who agree with that. A lot of people in that locker room felt that same way.
So yeah, that's that right there is the one that when you say that he would have the organization would have been okay with him coming back. I think the problem is a lot of the players wouldn't have agreed with him coming back. Like, you quit on us. Like, that's basically, you quit on us in the middle at the end of the season. You quit on us, and I can't play with nobody. I'm not about to sit there and play on a Sunday and take the field with a guy and play with a guy who quit on us. That you once you do that, it's no point of return. You cannot come back. Flat out. It's because we look at it like a war. If you quit on us in the middle of a war, it's over with.
And you saw them move on from Austin Hooper. You saw them move on from Jarvis Landry. Landry specifically, I wonder if that is any way at all tied to what you're just talking about, because obviously we didn't hear from Jarvis hardly at all last year. I think it's pretty obvious why that was, why he was frustrated. There was a sense that possibly he could return after they made the change of quarterback, but as long as Baker was here, I don't think there's any chance Jarvis was ever coming back.
Which is so
probably because of what you just said.
Yeah. It's beyond telling, and Tyvis actually never shared that. So, way to go!
But I do give Baker his props. You know, listen, I got a couple of good notes on Baker. You know, Baker is the guy who brought a dead franchise back. No, we wasn't nobody really. We had good fan support.
Funky Buddha.
Great fan support. You know, we wanted to see some wins, and he got us some wins. He took us to new heights. But like everybody say, like you can't be mad at an organization for seeing a guy. First of all, a guy that quit on you, you don't want him back under center. That's one. He's shown that in the fire, he's not going to get it done. He's going to flee. So you can't have that as a quarterback and as the leader of your team. There's no way that you can have that, because y'all will lose every single game, every single time. So that's one right there. But outside of that, I mean, right now, I think the Carolina trade, I think that's
so how does he do in Carolina? I mean, both of you. How does he do in Carolina?
Well, that's a problem, because to me, Higgy is the only person that he got some former Higgy, and it's a tight end there. I think Siebert, I think his name is. Ain't that a tight end? Austin Siebert, ain't something like that. Anyways, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyways, Higgy is there, and he got DJ Moore. So I think what he needs to do is it's a clean slate. Now, the receivers is going to be skeptical because of the Odell stuff. That's universal. If you couldn't get Odell the ball, how in the world you going to get me the ball? Because I'm not Odell, and Odell's seemed to be like this great wide receiver. You couldn't even get him the ball. So that right there is a little riff. He's going to have to win them back when they in the preseason. If he's able to play in the preseason, he's going to have to go out there, win, and show that he can rally, bring that passion that he had when he first was a Brown. You know, that his first rookie season when he came in, it was just electrifying, that Thursday night game. He brought so much energy to that stadium. He's going to have to find a way to do that again for Carolina, and show that he can make those throws. I think it's one of those things that he just going to have to earn it back. He got to earn it from the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, the talent around him in Carolina is not as good as it was in Cleveland, but the conference he's playing in now is not as good as what the AFC is. I think the AFC is far superior to the NFC, top to bottom. So, listen, I fully expect him to win the starting job. Sam Darnold's trash. Matt Corral's not going to win that job. So Baker will be the week one starting quarterback against the Browns. I can't believe that.
Unreal.
Jason, what do you got to say about, because I read an article that before they made this trade, they talked to Matt Corral and told him that you are our long-term answer, that this doesn't affect anything. This is a short-term marriage with Baker. So how would you think of that?
I think you have to tell him that. Number one, doesn't mean anything. Teams lie to players all the time. Like, this is Baker's job to go in here. Yeah, they lie all the time. I've never met a player that trusts any organization in any sport. I cover them all. I've never met a player that. Why do you think players, when they get hurt, they go to their own doctors for the surgeries? They go find their own doctors to have surgeries. How often do team doctors ever operate on players? Very, very rarely, because players don't trust teams, and it's whether it's medical, whether it's contracts, whatever it is, they just don't trust him. So he's a fool if he believes him. Number one. This is Baker's job. If Baker goes out and balls out and plays well, which he could have a great year. And he could sign a long-term deal in Carolina. But as the third round pick, I don't, occasionally, Dak was probably ready to play fairly early on as a lower round pick. I think Dak was fourth. Russ Wilson was another guy as a mid-round pick who could come in and play right away. But you're not drafting a guy in the third round to play right away, a quarterback, to me. You're not taking a guy in the third round thinking he's a day one starter. If you're drafting the third round, you need a year to sit, maybe even 2 years to sit and learn the league and learn the system and whatever else. So it probably, hey, look, they got nothing to lose. They got a free look at Baker for 1 year. But, the point I've made before is he's not, the situation he's walking into, it's like Hugh Jackson all over again. He's walking into a place where the coach could be fired 3 weeks into the season, 4 weeks into the season. Matt Rule has zero job security. If you look at Vegas boards, he's one of the heavy favorites to be the first one fired this year. So he could, as we talk about how, because I do think the Browns, did put Baker behind the 8 ball in a couple different ways. And one of them was all the turnover that he had. He's had 4 head coaches his first 3 years in the league. Well, he's walking right back into another situation just like that, where his coach could get fired just a few weeks after he gets there. So that's a tough spot to be in.
But isn't that Jason, though, like what kind of works out perfect for him? Because then it's another excuse. Like, I just feel like this is like a continuous train for him, because if Matt Rule does get fired, right, he can be like, well, it's another coach fired, like it's another place for him to place blame, depending on how he does.
Well, when the blame's going to run out, when you can stop blaming everyone else at the end of the season, doing he's a free agent, he's got to sign a contract, and it's all on him. So this year, there's more pressure on him than any other year. And it doesn't matter with the talent around him. It doesn't matter what's going on a head coach. It doesn't matter that it's not an ideal spot. He's playing for his next contract. And we were having a debate a year ago at this time of whether or not he's worth $300 million, $350 million, or whatever astronomical number you want to throw out there. Clearly, the Browns never even offered him that. So they didn't agree with that. But that was the thought. Is Baker worth Josh Allen money? And that's what he's playing for. He's playing for his next contract. And that's what cracks me up when people scream and holler and say, well, they should have sat Baker last year because of shoulder injury, or why did they let him play, or they didn't have the guts to stand up to him and bench him. No, that's not it at all. They were trying to make a decision on this guy. They were trying to decide whether or not he was worth the contract. That's why he played. Mm-hmm. First of all, he was cleared medically. Now, we just said players don't trust the medical team, but he's cleared medically to play. And if he's cleared medically to play, you put him out there because you're trying to make a decision
and he wanted to play. I think that's what Tyvis and I went into deep discussion, because I was like, tell me the process, and he's like, at the end of the day, ultimately it is they can tell me that, sure, they can clear me, right? But then it's still up to me to decide.
If he says I'm not right, I don't feel like I should play. Yeah, he can sit himself for sure. Yeah. And that didn't happen. And that didn't happen. So it's such, man, 20 years from now, we're still going to be talking about this. We really are.
Well, and I think it's hard because, and I know that you turn off your mentions on social media, Jason. By the way, I went to bat for your article last week because I tweeted about it.
Why'd you do that? I told you don't do that.
I support good journalism, and I support the facts and the truth. Okay. And this was
What did I text you?
I know. I said, and you said, don't turn off the mentions.
Get off Twitter.
Yeah, I know. Well,
you could turn off.
It was a good distraction from me saying no to my date. How about that?
Yeah, Holly was in some Twitter beef. I was sitting there just like,
oh yeah. Tyvis texted me too. He's like, "Are you drinking right now? Are you serious?"
He's like, you know what? This is sad because I was one of them people that would go back and forth with people on Twitter, and y'all know Sherm has been my mentor since I got into the league. And he said something to me a couple months ago where he was like, because it was when he got into it with the Matt Stafford stuff. His brother Matt Stafford should be in the Hall of Fame, and he gave his opinion on it. And I was reading the responses, and I'm like, sure. And I read them to him. He was like, well, I don't really care. He said the only responses that I care about is the people got my number. So whatever he says, he just says it and don't look at dimensions, because if he cares about their opinion, they could just call them or text them. I was like, man, you know what? When he said that, I was like, I'm gonna start doing that.
Well, and I asked you,
I-
Tyvis, I was like, is anything I'm saying wrong? It's not wrong. Some people have most ridiculously stupid takes on sports. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, you can't pay attention to the barn animals, man.
No.
I get tripped up once in a while. Every once in a while they get me. I'll look and I'm like, and then I go back to shutting them off again. So yeah, I keep them off for the most part.
I fell for it that night. I fell for that night. I was like, have you drinking? I was like, maybe I've had one. I don't know, but it's one. And I was very, very coherent and fine. I don't drunk tweet. I mean, well, the last time I drunk tweeted was when I was out with my friends a couple weeks ago, and they had $5 vodka sodas in Kent. And that was the greatest thing ever. And I took a picture of the receipt because I was shocked.
I saw that.
I'm like, this is amazing. $5 vodka soda. So that was probably the last time I did that.
That's harmless.
We'll see. I don't drunk tweet and talk about sports. Put it that way, because that's never a good thing.
Yeah, it's never gonna end well.
I would never.
You know who else shouldn't tweet and their feelings is Baker Mayfield. So hopefully he has learned some valuable life lessons here in Cleveland that he's going to take down to Carolina.
If the last year has not humbled that man, nothing will.
Yeah.
Nothing will. And the thing I keep going back to, if I'm counseling Baker, I'd tell him, like, listen, you said you wanted to go to Indianapolis. You said publicly you wanted to go to Indianapolis. Indianapolis had a needed quarterback. Indianapolis knows something about quarterbacks, franchise quarterbacks. They had Peyton Manning, they had Andrew Luck. I really like their front office. I think they're a really well-run team. They could have had 26, 27-year-old Baker Mayfield. He could have been the quarterback there for the next 10 years. And they said, you know what? We like this old, broken down jalopy Matt Ryan, who hasn't had a good year in 3 years. We think we could squeeze maybe 2 or 3 good years out of him. We'll go that route instead. That alone is so telling. It gets overlooked by all the master bakers that it just drives me crazy. That the fact, like, listen, there's another NFL team completely separate from the Browns who could have looked at Baker, seen all the film on him, and said, yeah, we there's enough there. We can fix that. We can have that guy for 10 years. We can get him for pennies on the dollar, and he can be our starting quarterback for the next 10 years. And they said, nope, we're going to go get Matt Ryan instead. What does that tell you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you're right. It's hopefully, yeah, he's buried his head in the sand and he's going to pop out, another very inconsistent quarterback.
He's going to play. He'll be motivated this year. He's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. He'll have a good
that's
year.
True. It might be the good year.
Angry Baker is the best Baker, but how long does that actually last?
I actually hope that he gets it back on track, man.
I don't think anybody wishes him ill will, Tyvis. It's just
I just Bull does. Bull's rooting against him. Bull wants to see him fail.
That's Bull.
Okay, wait.
But I'm with you guys. I don't wish ill will on him. There's no reason for me to want him to fail.
I ain't got nothing against the guy at all. He didn't mean nothing.
But of course, you can't say that he's just not good enough, right? Without getting just murdered on certain social media platforms. And I know that's just how it is. That's just the world we live in today, black and white.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
no gray area. So all right, well, Jason Lloyd, thank you so much for joining us today. Very much appreciated.
It's fun. Let's go to the Funky Buddha.
We'll go to the Funky. Maybe we'll do a live show from the Funky Buddha
I
during
don't
the
even know
season.
what's there anymore. I gotta drive down there and see what's there.
You gotta go to the Velvet Dog, man. That's
Velvet Dog.
That's where that's more y'all taste right there. The Velvet Dog.
Boy, I spent many nights on that rooftop at Velvet Dog.
See what I'm saying? See?
Past my prime. Well, that is for sure. Well, maybe we won't be seeing Baker Mayfield out at the Funky Buddha, that's for sure. So, all right. For Tyvis Powell, I'm Holly Wetzel. He is Taj. Ty Cord's our producer. And for Jason Lloyd, thanks so much. And we will talk to you soon. And go Browns.